The sharp sound jumped across the company gate like a gunshot. People looked up. The security guard's mouth fell open. The woman in the tattered ash gown held her cheek and staggered. "Next time know the kind of people you embarrass," Rebecca shouted, breath hot with anger. "If you made good use of your youth, you wouldn't be on the street begging at your age. If your children were sensible, you would be at home, not here asking for money." The woman didn't answer. She only blinked, eyes wet, hands still on her face. Her hair was messy. Her dress was stained with mud. She looked like someone the world had forgotten. Across the driveway, a man in a navy blue suit stopped mid-step. Mr. Davis, the company's manager, knew her. He knew the truth no one else knew. His eyes widened. His phone slid from his hand and hit the floor. "Good morning, sir," the security guard said. Not understanding his shock, Mr. Davis didn't respond. His face turned pale as he stared at the woman in rags. Earlier that morning, Rebecca woke up in a bright, fancy apartment the company had given her. The curtains were white and soft. The bed was big. Her official car waited downstairs, polished and black like a mirror. She was a star engineer at Davis Tech, the biggest software company her friends knew. People said she was the best. She believed it. Her driver opened the door. "Good morning, madam." She nodded, barely looking at him. "We're late. Let's go." On the way, Lagos moved around her. The yellow city buses honking. The street sellers balancing trays. The sun already strong. Rebecca scrolled through her phone. Messages from coworkers filled her screen. "Don't forget your board demo at noon. The manager says, be sharp today. Did you hear the rumors? New CEO is arriving this week." Rebecca smiled. "If there's a new CEO," she muttered, "they'll be lucky to have me." At the gate, the driver slowed. As the car turned in, someone stepped forward. A thin woman in a dirty ash gown raised a shaking hand. "Please, my daughter," the woman said softly. "Anything for food." Rebecca sighed and rolled her eyes. She remembered this gate from her first day. How small she felt then, how big the company looked. Now she felt big and the world outside looked small. She pushed open the door and stepped out. Her heels clicked on the pavement. Her expensive perfume followed her like a flag. "I said move back," she told the woman. "Don't stand in front of people's cars." The woman bowed her head. "I am sorry. I am hungry." "I don't care," Rebecca snapped. "This is not your village market." The guard shifted uncomfortably. He knew Rebecca. He also saw the woman's tired eyes. "Rebecca," the receptionist called from the gatehouse window, trying to calm her. "You'll be late for your demo." But Rebecca wasn't listening. Something in her wanted to show power. Something in her wanted everyone to remember she was important. She had grown up with nothing. An orphan pushing through crowded classrooms, studying by candlelight. She had sworn no one would ever make her feel small again. When the woman reached a little closer, Rebecca's anger jumped. Her hand flew before her mind did. Slap. The slap landed. The world went silent for one long second. The woman's eyes watered. She didn't fight back. She just stood there shaking a little, hand pressed to her cheek. "Next time know the kind of people you embarrass," Rebecca said again, breathing hard. "You should not be here at all." That was when Mr. Davis walked up and saw everything. He froze. His chest felt like a heavy stone fell straight down. He knew the woman under those torn clothes. He had met her 2 days ago in a quiet office upstairs. He had received a sealed letter with a gold seal and a signature that carried weight in this city. Chief Robert Davis, the founder who had died last month. The letter named the new owner and CEO of Davis Tech, Madam Helen Davis, his only child. She had asked for secrecy. She had asked to see the company with her own eyes, as it truly was, before she spoke to the staff. And now he had just watched his best engineer slap her. Mr. Davis rushed forward, heart pounding. He bent low, almost to the ground. "Ma," he said to the woman in rags, voice shaking. "I am deeply sorry for this embarrassing situation. Please forgive her. She doesn't know you." Rebecca stared at him like he had grown a second head. "Sir, why are you apologizing to this homeless woman for me? for telling her the obvious truth. Mr. Davis turned to her, panic in his eyes. Will you be quiet? His voice cracked across the driveway. You just slapped our new CEO. The words hit the air and stuck there. The guard gasped. The receptionist covered her mouth. Even the hawker outside the fence whispered, CO. Rebecca's jaw dropped. Our what? The woman in the ash gown lifted her chin just a little. There was a calm strength in her eyes now. She didn't look weak anymore. She looked steady, like someone who had walked through storms and come out standing. Ma, Mr. Davis said again, bowing. I will handle this. Rebecca's anger melted into cold fear. She stumbled forward and fell to her knees right there by the gate. Dust stained her neat skirt. I am sorry, she cried. I didn't know. Please forgive me. Cars slowed to watch. Staff gathered. A driver took off his cap and looked down. The morning sun felt harsher than before. The woman finally spoke. Her voice was low but clear. What is your name? Rebecca. Ma. And what do you do here, Rebecca? I am a software engineer. I lead the mobile team, she whispered. The woman looked at Mr. Davis. Is she good at her work? Yes, Ma. Very good, he said quickly. One of our best. The woman nodded slowly, eyes never leaving Rebecca's face. You are skilled, she said. But is this how you represent our company? Is this how you treat people who have less than you? Rebecca's throat tightened. Words stuck inside it. The woman turned to Mr. Davis. What did your father teach you? She asked, and for the first time, the manager heard her call Chief Robert, your father. It sounded gentle and heavy at once. Mr. Davis swallowed. That our name is not just on a building, he said softly. It is in how we treat people. The woman looked back at Rebecca. Her eyes were kind and firm at the same time. I wore these clothes, she said, touching the dirty gown. To see the heart of this place, to see the heart of the people who carry our badge. Today, I saw yours. Tears filled Rebecca's eyes. She wanted to explain everything. She wanted to say she had been poor, that she had fought her way up, that the world had been cruel to her first. She wanted to say she had only wanted respect. But none of those words could wash away what she had done a minute ago. Behind them, the company logo shimmered on the glass. Davis Tech staff faces in the reflection looked small and worried. The woman took a breath. We are not only after skills, she said. We are concerned about attitude, about how our people carry our name in the streets of this city. She paused. The whole gate seemed to hold its breath. Rebecca, she said quietly, if this is the best a software engineer of this company can put out, then she does not deserve to be here. The words fell like a final bell. Rebecca's shoulders shook. Mr. Davis, the woman said without raising her voice. Call HR. Yes, Ma. Dismiss her. Silence. A bird flapped away from a fence post. Somewhere far down the road, a car horn cried out and then stopped. Rebecca lifted her head, cheeks wet. The world tilted. Her official car sat there shiny and cold. Her access card hung heavy on its clip. In her mind, she saw doors closing her office, her team chat, her bright apartment, the life she had built piece by piece. I am sorry, she whispered again. Please. The woman looked at her for one long moment that felt like forever. Then she turned and started walking toward the building, still wearing her tattered ash gown. Guards and staff parting to let her pass. Mr. Davis took out his phone with trembling hands. The receptionist began to cry. And Rebecca, still on her knees by the hot concrete, watched as 2 HR officers and a security supervisor stepped out of the lobby and started toward the gate. The office air that day was thick with whispers. By lunchtime, the slap had spread like wildfire across every corner of Davis Tech staff couldn't believe it. The arrogant Rebecca, the woman who strutted through corridors like she owned the company, had slapped the new CEO in disguise. Some employees shook their heads in disbelief. Others laughed quietly in corners, but everyone was waiting to see what would happen next. Inside the HR office, Rebecca sat stiffly in a chair. Her eyes were red from crying, but her pride still burned inside her chest. She wanted to scream, to insist it was a mistake, to beg them to overlook this one moment. But the HR manager didn't smile, didn't soften. He simply handed her a white envelope. "You've been dismissed," he said firmly. "Your official car and apartment keys should be returned immediately. Security will accompany you." The words cut deeper than any knife. Rebecca stared at him, her mouth trembling. "But I'm one of your best engineers. I have given everything to this company." The HR manager's face didn't change. "We are not only after skills," he said coldly, echoing the words Madame Helen had spoken at the gate. "We are concerned about attitude. Your behavior does not represent who we are." Her chest caved. The walls of the HR office closed in on her. By the time she was escorted out, her coworkers were standing in small groups watching. Some pitied her, others whispered with satisfaction. She had insulted many of them before, mocking their cheap shoes, laughing at their old phones, belittling those who came from humble homes. Now the tables had turned. Her driver didn't open the door this time. The official car was no longer hers. Even the security guard, who once greeted her with a forced smile, avoided her eyes. Rebecca walked out of the gate carrying nothing but a handbag and a small cardboard box with her belongings. The same spot where she had raised her hand to slap a homeless woman now felt like a battlefield she had lost. Within days, her life unraveled. The fancy apartment was locked, her access card deactivated. The comfort she once enjoyed vanished like smoke. Rebecca tried to apply for new jobs, but her pride was still high. She insisted she was the best, and yet no company wanted her. Some recruiters knew about the scandal, others didn't. But something in her attitude pushed them away. Weeks later, desperate and tired of rejection, she fell into the very trap she mocked, paying a corrupt agent for a job offer. $2,000. That was everything she had left. She wired the money, waiting for the promised offer letter. But the agent vanished. His number went dead. His email bounced. He blocked her on every platform. Rebecca sat on the edge of her bed in a small rented room, holding her empty bank account details on her phone. Her hands trembled. The news spread quickly in her neighborhood. People who once feared her arrogance now mocked her openly. "Engineer Rebecca with no job," they laughed. Some even imitated her proud walk in the compound, making fun of the way she once tossed her handbag over her shoulder. She couldn't walk to the market without hearing whispers. Her past insults to neighbors echoed back at her. Even the children she once snapped at for playing too loud now pointed and giggled. Day after day, she locked herself inside her small room. Hunger pressed her stomach. Loneliness pressed her chest. Her pride, once tall, now lay shattered at her feet. One night, the air was heavy and still. Rebecca sat on her thin mattress in the dim light of a single bulb. Her hands trembled as she held a small bottle of liquid she had bought from a chemist earlier that day. Her voice broke as she whispered to herself, "I made a terrible mistake because of my arrogance, and now I am paying for it. I am an orphan who struggled to get a degree. I should have known better, but I don't know what came over me. Maybe tonight I will finally sleep peacefully." Tears streamed down her cheeks. She tilted the bottle and drank. Her body went cold. Her breathing slowed. Darkness pulled her under. Morning came. Her neighbor, Martha, noticed something strange. Rebecca had not come out to fetch water as she usually did. Concern grew in her chest. She knocked once. No answer. She knocked again harder. "Rebecca," she called. Still silence. Something wasn't right. With the help of two neighbors, they forced the door open. What they saw froze them in place. Rebecca sprawled on the bed, lips pale, the empty bottle lying beside her. "Jesus!" Martha cried. "She's dying." They rushed her out, flagging down a passing bike. The hospital was far, but they moved fast. Every second felt like a war against time. When they arrived, the doctors examined her and said words that chilled everyone. "She needs emergency treatment. If we don't get funds now, she won't survive." But Rebecca had no family, no one to call, no one to pay. The doctors shook their heads. Time was running out, and just as hope seemed lost, the doors of the hospital burst open. In walked Mr. Davis, followed by a woman in a clean flowing gown. It was Madame Helen. The staff stood still. The doctor's voice trembled. "Ma, we need funds now or this young woman won't make it." Without hesitation, Madame Helen reached for her purse. "Do whatever it takes to save her. She doesn't need to die because of her mistake. She needs to live and learn from it." Mr. Davis nodded. "Pay for everything." The doctors rushed into action. Machines beeped. Nurses ran. The room filled with movement and urgency. And Rebecca, lying on the thin line between life and death, had no idea that the same woman she once slapped was now fighting to save her life. The first thing Rebecca felt was the sting of bright light against her eyelids. Her head throbbed as though drums were beating inside her skull. Slowly, she opened her eyes. White walls, the smell of antiseptic, a faint beeping sound. She tried to sit up, but her body was too weak, and 4-line ran into her hand. For a moment, she didn't know where she was or why she was alive. Then her gaze shifted, and her heart nearly stopped. Sitting quietly in a chair by her bedside was Madame Helen. No longer dressed in tattered clothes, no longer looking like a homeless beggar. Instead, she wore a graceful flowing gown, her hair neatly tied, her presence commanding respect. Her eyes were calm yet sharp, as if they saw right through Rebecca. Rebecca gasped, her voice breaking. "It's you." "Yes," Madame Helen replied softly. "It's me, the woman you slapped." Rebecca's lips trembled. Shame pressed her chest so hard she could barely breathe. "Please forgive me. I didn't know." Madame Helen leaned forward, her voice steady but not harsh. "That's the point, Rebecca. You didn't know, but you assumed. You judged. You mocked. You let your pride lead your hand. That slap was not just against me. It was against kindness, against humility, against everything you should have stood for as a young woman with a future." Tears rolled down Rebecca's cheeks. She couldn't lift her head. I thought my life was over. I even tried to end it. Why would you save me after all I did to you?" Madame Helen paused, her voice cracked with memory. "Because I have been where you are. Years ago, I was once proud, reckless, and I lost everything. My father gave me a second chance. And when I saw you on that bed, I remembered myself. If I had died back then, I would never have become who I am today." Her eyes softened. "I don't want your story to end in shame. I want it to end in change." Just then, Mr. Davis entered the room holding some hospital papers. He greeted respectfully. "Ma, the bills are fully settled. The doctors say she is out of danger." Rebecca looked at him with disbelief. You paid for me?" "Not me," Mr. Davis replied, glancing at Madame Helen. "She did." Rebecca's heart sank deeper. The very person she had despised, mocked, and humiliated was the one keeping her alive. Madame Helen rose slowly from her chair. Her figure stood tall, her voice calm, but commanding. "Rebecca, life is not measured by how much you own, but by how much humility you carry. Remember that, because your arrogance nearly killed you." She turned to leave, but stopped at the door. "I'll see you again when you are ready to change. Not before." With that, she walked out, her footsteps echoing in the hallway. Left alone, Rebecca turned her head toward the small mirror fixed on the hospital wall. What she saw made her weep. Her once proud face looked pale and hollow. Her eyes were sunken, her lips cracked. She looked nothing like the powerful woman she had once imagined herself to be. She whispered to her reflection, "Is this who I've become? A woman who slapped her own destiny." Her tears fell freely. She realized that she was alive not because she deserved it, but because someone she had wronged had chosen mercy over revenge. The next morning, as Rebecca sat weakly on her bed, Martha entered with a food flask. The woman smiled kindly. "My daughter, eat something. You need strength." Rebecca's heart ached at her kindness. Just weeks ago, she had mocked Martha's old slippers, calling them village sandals. Now, here was the same woman bringing her food when she had nothing. Rebecca reached for her hand, her voice shaking. "Martha, I am sorry for everything. I was blind." Martha only patted her shoulder. "It is well, my child. God has spared your life. Don't waste this second chance." Rebecca broke down, crying in her arms. That night, alone again, Rebecca thought of everything. Her lost job, the betrayal of the fake agent, the laughter of neighbors, and now Madame Helen's unexpected mercy. She realized her life was no longer about proving she was the best. It was about learning to be human again. As she lay back on her pillow, she whispered, "If I survive this storm, I will change. I will become a woman worth forgiving." But deep down, she knew change would not be easy. And what she didn't know was that Madame Helen had already set plans in motion. Plans that would test her resolve in ways she never expected. When Rebecca was finally discharged from the hospital, she returned not to her former luxury apartment, but to the small, dimly lit room she now rented in a crowded compound. Her neighbors watched her quietly as she walked in, holding only a nylon bag with her medicines. For once, no one mocked her. Instead, they stared with curiosity, whispering among themselves. She lay on her bed that evening thinking. The memory of Madame Helen's voice echoed in her mind. "I'll see you again when you are ready to change." Those words were like a mirror reflecting her soul. The next morning, Rebecca decided to try again. She polished her CV, printed copies, and set out under the hot Lego sun to look for work. But this time, something inside her had shifted. She no longer marched with arrogance. She walked slowly, carefully, with a touch of humility in her steps. Her first stop was a mid-sized tech firm in the city. The receptionist looked at her resume and smiled politely. "We'll get back to you," she said. At the second company, she was told the position was filled. At the third, the HR manager frowned. "You used to work at Davis Tech?" He scanned her resume again. "Why did you leave?" Rebecca swallowed hard. She couldn't say she was fired for slapping the new CEO. "Personal reasons," she whispered. The man nodded but placed her CV aside without interest. By the fifth rejection, Rebecca's legs were weak. She found a bench by the roadside, sat down, and held her face in her palms. "God, am I finished?" she cried silently. As she sat there, a group of young women she once knew from her old neighborhood passed by. They spotted her immediately. "Isn't this Madame High Heels?" One sneered. Another laughed. "See her now sitting like a beggar. Where are your flashy handbags?" Rebecca's heart burned. The old Rebecca would have shouted back, maybe even slapped one of them. But now she stayed quiet. Her silence only fueled their mockery. "Next time, humble yourself," one said before they walked away. Rebecca wiped her tears. For the first time, she realized that keeping quiet was harder than shouting, but it also felt strangely freeing. That evening, she returned to her compound exhausted. Martha knocked on her door with a plate of rice. "My daughter, eat. You must not give up." Rebecca's eyes welled up again. "Martha, why are you so kind to me? I never respected you." Martha smiled gently. "Because kindness does not keep records of wrongs. Someday you will do the same for another." As Rebecca ate the simple rice, she felt a spark of hope. Maybe her life wasn't over. Maybe she still had a chance. The following week, as she washed her only 2 work blouses with her hands, her phone rang. It was an unknown number. "Hello," she answered weakly. "Is this Miss Rebecca?" a male voice asked. "Yes. This is from Davis Foundation. Madame Helen would like to see you tomorrow morning. 9 a.m. sharp." Rebecca froze. Her hands trembled so much the phone nearly slipped from her fingers. Why would Madame Helen call her again? After everything? The next morning she wore her cleanest blouse and skirt, ironed carefully, even though the fabric was old. She arrived at the Davis Foundation building, nervous and unsure. When she entered the boardroom, her eyes widened. Madame Helen sat at the head of the long polished table. Beside her was Mr. Davis flipping through some files. Several other executives sat quietly watching. Madame Helen's eyes fixed on Rebecca. Her voice was steady. "I did not call you here to humiliate you, Rebecca. I called you here to test you. There is a project. We are about to launch a program to help train young graduates from poor homes in software engineering. I want you to be part of it." Rebecca's mouth fell open. "Me? Yes, you," Madam Helen said firmly. "But understand this. This is not a job. This is service. You will teach them, guide them, and work with humility. No pride, no insults, no arrogance. If you succeed, perhaps life will open doors for you again. But if you fail, then you will know you are not ready." Rebecca's heart pounded. She couldn't believe it. This was her chance, not just to prove her skills, but to rebuild her character. Rebecca stood outside the Davis Foundation's training hall the following Monday morning. Her hands shook as she held her old laptop bag, the same one she once carried proudly into Davis Tech. But this time there was no chauffeur, no expensive car, no designer shoes. She was here as a humbled woman given one last chance to redeem herself. Inside the hall, about 30 young graduates sat on wooden benches. Most wore simple clothes, their eyes bright with both hope and fear. Some had traveled from villages just to be part of the program. Rebecca cleared her throat, stepped to the front, and introduced herself. "Good morning. My name is Rebecca and I will be guiding you." Her voice trembled, but she forced a smile. At first, things didn't go smoothly. Some students whispered among themselves. One bold young man raised his hand. "Madam, if you are such a great engineer, why are you here instead of at Davis Tech?" The question cut her like a blade. Everyone turned to hear her response. Old Rebecca would have snapped. "Do you know who I am?" But new Rebecca lowered her head and replied softly, "Because I made a terrible mistake. I was arrogant and it cost me everything. But I'm here to learn as much as I am here to teach." The hall went silent. Some students nodded slowly. They saw not a proud instructor but a wounded woman trying to rise again. Days turned into weeks. Rebecca worked tirelessly. She explained coding basics, debugged their errors, and encouraged those who struggled. Many times frustration tempted her to lash out, but she bit her tongue and remembered Madam Helen's words. This is service. Late at night, she stayed behind to help students who couldn't keep up. For the first time in her life, she wasn't chasing money or status. She was giving, and strangely, it filled her heart with peace. One rainy evening after a long class, Rebecca packed her things when she heard two students talking near the door. "Do you know this woman once slapped Madame Helen herself?" One whispered. "Yes," the other replied. "But look at her now. She is different. She treats us with respect." Rebecca froze. They knew. Her shameful secret had reached them. She expected laughter or rejection, but instead they spoke with admiration. "Maybe people can change," the second student added. Rebecca's eyes filled with tears. That night, she cried not from shame, but from relief. She was no longer running from her past. She was confronting it. 3 months later, the first batch of students graduated from the program. They presented their final projects before a panel of executives. Madame Helen sat at the center, her eyes fixed on Rebecca as she guided her students confidently. When the last project ended, the hall erupted in applause. Madame Helen rose, her face glowing with pride. She called Rebecca forward. "Ladies and gentlemen, today we are not only celebrating these graduates, but also a story of transformation." She placed her hand gently on Rebecca's shoulder. "This woman once made a grave mistake. She judged, she mocked, and she fell. But she chose to rise again. She served with humility, and because of that, she has earned not only my forgiveness, but my trust." The hall exploded with claps. Some students stood, cheering loudly. Tears streamed down Rebecca's cheeks as she bowed her head. Madame Helen smiled warmly. "From this day, Rebecca will not just be a trainer. She will join the Davis Foundation as a full-time coordinator. Let her story remind us all. Arrogance destroys, but humility builds." As the ceremony ended, Rebecca stood by the window, staring at the compound gate where her life had changed months ago. The same gate where she had raised her hand in arrogance to slap a woman she thought was beneath her. Now she understood the lesson. True greatness was not in wealth, titles, or pride. It was in humility, kindness, and the courage to change. She whispered to herself, "I was lost, but now I've been found." And somewhere behind her, Madame Helen watched silently, smiling with satisfaction. The arrogant woman had finally learned her lesson. If you like this story, comment, share, and subscribe to our channel for more interesting stories.